I'm sure it won't be long before you all want Rupert back on, because I can't follow that kind of speech, I'm afraid, when I'm talking about strategies for retirement income. It's probably not the most exciting subject, I'm afraid, but I'm going to do my best and give you a bit of a flavour of the sort of things that we can do in the financial planning team. So, as Daniel's kindly said, I'm Lee Hayward. I'm one of the financial planners with Kreston Reeves Financial Planning. And we're going to have a little look today at your life expectancy, typical income requirements that people have, and some of the retirement options that are available today, particularly in the pensions world, which underwent some significant changes back in 2015. Other sources of retirement income that you might have, tax considerations and allowances that you will have, and we'll also touch on inheritance tax in relation to pensions, and also a product that we get involved in called a discounted gift trust, which can be a useful part of inheritance tax planning. So, moving on, we as financial advisors obviously deal with a lot of clients, and those clients have all sorts of different goals when they are coming up to retirement and when they're at retirement, things that they want to do that perhaps they've never been able to do before. They often badge them as their bucket lists, and there's a few of them on there. I'm not convinced that too many of those are from my clients, but certainly a couple stand out. I mean, home improvements, I think, is a big one, helping children with deposits for property, spending time with family and looking after grandchildren. That might be one that sort of eases off after a while. Sorry. Louder. Sorry, okay, I shall try and go a bit louder. Yeah, so there is a bucket list there of things that people want to do. I think travel is probably a big one for those coming up to their retirement, who want to go and spend time on holiday and spend time abroad that perhaps they haven't been able to do in the run-up to retirement. So, life expectancy. Does anybody want to hazard a guess, if you're a 65-year-old male or female today, what your average life expectancy is? Anyone on the 80? 18 years, yeah, okay, 84. So we're in that sort of vicinity. Yeah, that's right. It is going to be, as you can see there, it's about 20 years, something like that, average. Women always seem to outlast the men by a couple of years. So as we pan through here, you'll see that although you've got a reasonable chance of maybe making the early 90s, again, women tend to live for a little bit longer than men. 1 in 10 chance of reaching the high 90s, and then living to 100. Well, okay, we may make it. So they're the latest statistics that we had from the Office of National Statistics for 2022. So it's quite a long time. Hopefully you're able to enjoy it in good health. And a typical sort of scenario for somebody who is coming up and entering retirement is that they're going to need different levels of capital, different levels of income at different points in that retirement, down that retirement pathway. We often refer to it as the retirement smile, because of the pattern, obviously, you can see there. And that's the pattern. So in the early years, it's quite often the case that people will want to spend a bit more money. They will be doing things that they are able to do, that they've wanted to do. They're going to be healthier, they're that bit younger, they're going to do the travelling, they're going to spend some money, go abroad. There's things that they've wanted to do that they're able to do. So that front end loaded piece around using some of that income at the beginning. As they get a little bit older, they may slow down a bit. They may downsize their property. Their expenditure may reduce a bit. They may stay closer to home, perhaps not decide to go on long haul holidays, rather go short haul and stay, as I say, closer to the UK. And at the back end, unfortunately, as we get older, of course, we start to, ailments and things start to creep in, and we may need some sort of assistance with our living, assisted living. We may need care and potentially long-term care. So, again, expenditure can go up, that income requirement, capital requirements can start to increase again. I had a client this morning, actually, and this is genuine, this morning in Horsham, my first visit to our Horsham office, actually, because I'm from Kent. They're looking at a care home in this area for the lady's mother, and they're looking at about £86,000 a year in terms of care. And that's going to be one that's probably up there, but in this kind of area, Kent, Sussex, that's probably not that unusual. So we're talking significant costs for care in the future. So let's have a little look at pensions. Pensions underwent a change in 2015. Prior to that, there was a point at which you had to use your pension fund to guarantee yourselves an income. You had to buy an annuity. That disappeared. So the government introduced something called pensions flexibility. And all of a sudden, you could take your entire pension fund out if you wanted to. You no longer had to buy this guaranteed income. You could actually take your entire pension fund. You would pay a lot of tax if you did it, because only 25% of your pension fund typically is going to be tax-free. So there would be a nice chunk for the tax man if you did this, but the possibility exists, okay? Obviously, this could push you into different tax brackets, and that's something to be aware of. If you have something called a capped drawdown, this was the predecessor to what is now flexi access or flexible drawdown. You can convert to flexi drawdown. Capped was just a flexible income option that had a ceiling on it, a cap. And with pensions flexibility and flexi access drawdown, that cap was removed. So if you've got one of these older arrangements, you can now move into flexi drawdown from there. And we want to just raise a point on expression of wishes. This is where you're nominating your beneficiaries for your pension fund. So we would recommend with every pension that you have that you nominate the people that you want to benefit from that pension in the event of your death. Again, it's very important, particularly if you are in drawdown, if you are in flexi drawdown or cap drawdown, it is very important because only dependent beneficiaries can have the option of drawdown unless there are no surviving dependents. So if you've nominated a non-dependent beneficiary, then they can only have the option of drawdown given to them if there are no surviving beneficiaries. Okay? Otherwise, they only get left the option of a lump sum. So it's very important with drawdown, you do make sure you've nominated somebody or your beneficiaries through one of these forms. The pension company will provide them. But we would say for every pension you've got, please make sure you've got a death benefit nomination in place. So we'll take a look at annuity versus drawdown here. On the left-hand side, we've got annuity. On the right-hand side, we've got drawdown. With an annuity, this is Tom from the case study. Tom's the one with the pension in this particular instance, and he's got £500,000. He's 55 years old. And that's worth just a note as well, because from 6th of April 2028, that is increasing, that minimum pension age is increasing to 57. Okay, so at the moment Tom can access his pension because he's 55 and they're the current rules. So he's taking his 25% lump sum, tax-free, 125,000, and he's got £375,000 left available to him to do something with, and he chooses to buy an annuity. So he's giving that capital away and he's guaranteeing himself an income for life, typically. Now, based on some assumptions we've used to calculate, he's got about £18,500 worth of income there per annum for the rest of his life. The only thing he's bought as part of that, in addition to that guaranteed income, is something called a guarantee. He's chosen a 5-year guarantee. So if Tom dies in 2 years, the pension will continue to pay to his estate for a further 3 years. If he survives 5 years, then of course it will continue for the rest of his lifetime. So if he's around at 110, that annuity is still paying out, okay? But he's given his capital away in return for that guaranteed income. Over on the drawdown side, he's got a pension value again of 500,000. Obviously, he chooses to match the income that he could get from the annuity. So there's his £18,500 of income. And based on, again, on some assumptions and some cash flow sort of forecasting tools and that we have, assumed growth rates, assumed inflation rates, we reckon that pot will last him till about the age of 98. So based on his life expectancy and those life expectancy stats that we looked at, that becomes a viable option for him. He could match his annuity income and still have control of his capital. The beauty of that is, under drawdown rules, when he dies, any remaining pot that is in that pension fund can pass down the line to a spouse, to other nominated beneficiaries, whoever it may be. With the annuity, capital buys the income, but the capital's gone. So it's a bit of a done deal. Okay? So in picture terms, why isn't annuity always the best? And we do annuities, so let's not forget the annuity. It's still a viable product, and for some, a guaranteed income is definitely a better option for them. But it is inflexible. So we're looking at a situation here where maybe we've got somebody with some state pension income in the orange at the bottom there, perhaps a final salary pension in the blue, and then their annuity income in the green. But they have an increased requirement for income at the beginning and at the end. And in the middle, their income needs have reduced. So the inflexibility of the annuity means that at times they've got too much income, and at other times they haven't really got enough. And there's not really anything they can do to influence that once they've bought the annuity. The flip side of that is looking at the drawdown. The drawdown allows us to flexibly access the income that we need to meet our income requirements. So it is a much better, much more flexible solution if you're going to try and match your income need, your income to your income requirement or your income need. There is the option. I talked about taking a lump sum at the beginning of your pension, 25%. You don't have to take your lump sum all in one go. You can phase it in over a period of time. So you can take smaller lump sums and crystallise chunks of your pension. So you're not necessarily taking a big lump sum tax-free, parking it in something outside of the pension fund that then is actually less inheritance tax-friendly. By keeping more of the money that you have inside your pension, you're of course in a very tax-efficient environment because there is no taxation on the pension fund itself. And that, if in the event of your death, that pension fund can pass on inheritance tax-free to your beneficiaries. What else? Yeah, I mean, drawdown as well. If you, in the event of your death, any income that continues to your beneficiaries is free of income tax if you die before the age of 75. So again, from an income tax perspective, the pension can be very, very efficient on death. After 75, death occurs after 75, that tax position is slightly different, and the beneficiary is taxed at their marginal rate of income tax. But still, a very useful tax-efficient side to the pension that exists if you're using the annuity, the drawdown method. So, having looked at the pensions, you may of course have other income sources. You may have cash invested. You may have other investments, shares, buy-to-let properties, rental, collective investment funds, so bonds, ISAs, taxable portfolios. So combined with the pensions, these can provide even more flexibility around how you access your income in retirement. And how you access and where you're taking it from will also dictate the level of tax that you pay. So it's a very important part of any financial planning that we do is to understand your tax position, obviously your income needs, what you need in terms of income and capital, and to decide where we should be taking that from. What order should we be approaching these different assets in to actually pull that income out and keep your tax liability as low as possible. So just on ISAs, away from pensions for a moment, ISAs on death, and this only applies to a spouse or civil partner, nobody else. But if your spouse dies and they have an ISA, there is an allowance available called an additional permitted subscription, or APS. So as the surviving spouse, you are allowed to invest the value of the deceased spouse's ISA in an ISA of your own. And that's in addition to your own typically £20,000 ISA allowance that you get every tax year. Okay, so that's useful. You don't have to have the funds from the deceased spouse to actually use this allowance. If you've got capital of your own, you can invest that and use the allowance that way. You would apply, you would approach the ISA company in this situation for confirmation of the APS, the amount involved, which is typically the amount at the date of death. If by the time the transfer is made to you, there has been an increase in value, then the increased value is substituted. And normally, post-death, the ISA becomes something called a continuing ISA. So typically, ISAs, there's a risk that they will lose their tax status following death, but they become continuing ISAs for a period of up to 3 years where they retain their tax status whilst the estate is being administered. Okay. If the ISA that you hold and that your spouse held are with the same ISA company, then it's possible for the transfer to take place sort of in specie. It can just switch across from one to the other. If you have your ISA with different organisations, then typically the investments would need to be sold first and then reinvested as cash. But as I say, that cash investment, that APS, does not affect your ability to put your £20,000 into your ISA in that tax year as well. So on the subject of allowances, just going back, we talked about allowances a little bit. You have tax allowances that shelter you from tax. And we look, as I say, to try and ensure that you access your income in the right way to minimise that tax liability. So you have a personal allowance, which gives you up to £12,570 of tax-free income. On top of that, you have dividend allowances of £2,000, starting rate for savings, where your other income, if your other income is below £12,570 a year, typically earned income, then you have this additional savings allowance for interest of up to £5,000, which disappears on a pound-for-pound basis where your income exceeds £12,570 from other sources. But potentially there is a further £5,000 worth of interest that you can have tax-free on top of your personal allowance. And then capital gains tax, another area that we can help manage, and obviously Rupert was referring to that with the antiques that he gets involved in. With investments, there are certain taxable investments that we can manage to utilise your capital gains tax allowance, your £12,300 per tax year per person. Husband and wife would have one each, and actually crystallise gains inside a portfolio to utilise those allowances. These, again, I think it was mentioned earlier, have been frozen until April 2026. One pension-related product, catchy name, the Uncrystallised Funds Pension Lump Sum, trips off the tongue. UF Plus, we tend to refer to it as. This is something we're seeing a little bit more interest in from people, and I'll show you why in a second. But in that particular graph there, we've just got our pension drawdown fund. We've got our opportunity to take 25% tax-free, and we've got the rest of the fund available to us as income. But if somebody has their personal allowance available, they've got no other income, they've got £12,570 of income available that they could earn or receive without paying any income tax. UF Plus is an opportunity to utilise that by crystallising part of that pot. So you nominate part of that to UF Plus, and in this picture here we can see that somebody's able to generate £16,760 of tax-free income by crystallising a chunk of their pension. So they've crystallised that chunk, they've got 25% of it tax-free, the 4,190, and there's the 12,570, which is income, but it's falling within their personal allowance and so doesn't suffer any tax. Okay? So that's quite neat. So my last couple of slides are really around inheritance tax, not specifically related to pensions. But pensions are, as I've said, very flexible in relation to inheritance tax. And it's also, because of their efficiency, it's often the case that we would target other savings and investments for the production of your income before you'd consider touching your pension, because it's the one thing that sits outside inheritance tax as a bit of a constant. So it might make sense, as I say, to access other savings and investments before you actually tap into your pension. You could, of course, spend it. That's another option. You could make sure that you upgrade to first class when you travel. You could buy the bottle instead of the glass, that kind of thing. Choose from the a la carte menu. That's one way of getting rid of it. After all, 40% of the cost of that is what would be disappearing to the government if you keep it in your estate and you're liable to inheritance tax. But we'll touch finally on the discounted gift trust, a bit of a whistle-stop tour of this product. This is where somebody might have capital that they're able to give away for the benefit of others, family, children, whatever it may be. But they would like to retain some form of access to an income stream. So with this product, there is an immediate inheritance tax saving. So it's outside of your estate, straight away, some of it, based on the entitlement that the donor, the person giving the money away, would have to income. So with the rest of the gift outside after that 7-year wait that a lot of you might be familiar with, the 7-year, you make a gift, typically you've got to survive 7 years. So this product allows some of the gift to be discounted immediately from your estate, with the remainder after 7 years. And that immediate discount is based on the person's entitlement to the income that they select at the outset. So in the example we've got here, there's an investment of £300,000, and they've chosen to take 5% a year, £15,000 of income. That's tax-deferred income. That doesn't have to go on a tax return. It's not treated as income. It's actually a return of capital. Okay, so there's no tax implications for that at the point they take it. So based on actuarial calculations by the provider, they work out what potentially they will discount the gift by immediately for inheritance tax purposes, based on that income, life expectancy, and other bits and pieces. So we can have a situation here. We've got a healthy 50-year-old where the calculations come back to us, and they've said that £259,000 can be classed as discounted from that gift straight away. That's a saving of £103,660 in inheritance tax at the outset, with the rest, as I say, outside after 7 years, the other 40,000. This type of trust now has to be registered with HMRC through something I think Gary might be picking up on later, I'm not sure. This is a trust registration, so it's a requirement that there is a registration of this kind of trust with the Trust Registration Service at HMRC. So what do we suggest you do? Well, whether planning for retirement or already retired, looking at future income and expenditure, how much you're going to need, when you're going to need it, where the money's going to be coming from. With your help, we can work with you. We can do some cash flow forecasting, some sort of sophisticated software that helps us work out when you might need money the most, where we are best accessing it from in terms of tax efficiency. Which assets you're going to earmark for retirement planning in the build-up to retirement, and which investments are most suitable for your particular circumstances. So consider your tax planning. That's what we would do with you, using full allowances as where we can, and getting the maximum tax relief on contributions, and then, as I say, talking to you about which order you start to decumulate your assets to provide you with the capital and income that you need. Consider future changes. A lot of this on the go at the moment. Economic, climate, financial markets, political, the whole landscape seems to be shifting at the moment. So lots of things for us to keep on top of with you, and that all fits into the sort of review service that we offer clients going forward. And if you take nothing else away from the presentation, independent financial advice. We would say we're independent financial advisors after all. You'd expect me to say it, but do seek independent financial advice, and we can help you avoid potentially costly mistakes. If you're out there without advice, it's very easy to make. There's some complex areas, so please do come and talk to us.